Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? This time, you sent us some really interesting excerpts about, well, Celeborn.
Lord of Lothlórien.
Exactly. And I've got to admit, when I first saw all these sources, I thought, really? Celeborn? He's not exactly the flashiest elf, you know?
Right, he's not a Legolas or a
Yeah. Not a Fëanor.
no, not setting trees on fire, that's for sure.
Not him.
But that's what makes this deep dive so cool,
Yeah.
right? We're going beyond the kind of the obvious names to uncover some hidden depths.
Totally. So we've got stuff about Celeborn's history, his personality, how he and Galadriel actually rule together, even how the movies kind of messed him up.
Oh yeah, the movies didn't do him justice.
No, not at all. But by the end of this, you'll see why Celeborn matters way more than you might think. Trust me.
He's more than just Galadriel's husband.
Oh, absolutely. Speaking of which, one thing that really struck me from these excerpts is how legit powerful Celeborn is on his own. I mean, we always hear about him being this Cinderin prince.
Elf Lord, very high lineage.
Right, Elf Lord, thank you. But there's this one detail that really, drives it home. He's directly connected to King Thingol.
From the first age, one of the original Elven kings.
Yeah, of Doriath. I mean, that's huge.
It establishes a depth of history, a sense of authority that he carries.
So it's not just that he's married to Galadriel, it's like...
He has his own credentials.
Exactly. He's got serious elven cred. So how does that, how does being descended from Thingol, how does that actually affect the kind of leader Celeborn is?
Well, think about it. He's seen the rise and fall of kingdoms firsthand.
Oh, for sure.
Doriath, one of the most magnificent elven realms, destroyed in the First Age. That's going to leave a mark on you.
Makes sense. So he's not some naive...
No, he's seen the dangers.
Yeah, the dangers of Middle-earth.
The cost of war, the fragility of peace.
Which explains why he's always described as, wise and cautious.
Celeborn the Wise, the texts call him. He favors counsel, careful deliberation, not rushing into things.
Like that friend who's always saying, hold on, let's think this through.
Exactly. Always weighing the options, considering the long-term consequences.
But it's interesting, right? Because you have this wisdom, this preference for, peace and careful planning. But then your excerpts also talk about his pragmatism.
Ah, yes, the balance.
Yeah, he's not just some, ethereal elf living in the clouds.
No, he's grounded. He understands the realities of Middle-earth. A great example of this is in Fellowship of the Ring, when the Fellowship wants to go through Moria.
Ooh, it's risky.
Very risky. And Galadriel, she's more open to it, trusting Gandalf's judgment.
Yeah, she's got that faith.
But Celeborn's like, no way, Moria's bad news.
He's like, nope, been there, done that, not good.
It shows this tension, right? The wise elf, who's also deeply aware of the dangers, who's not afraid to voice his concerns.
So he's wise, but also, skeptical.
A healthy skepticism, learned from experience.
Which honestly makes him super relatable.
I think so. He's cautious, but not out of fear, but out of understanding.
Right, understanding how easily things can go wrong.
Exactly. And that really adds another layer to his partnership with Galadriel, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. Because we always hear about them as this power couple, this ultimate elf duo.
Right, the Lord and Lady of Lothlórien ruling together.
But it's more than just, a romantic partnership, right?
It's a balance of power.
How does it actually work? How do their different personalities make them good rulers?
It's fascinating. Celeborn, he's Cinderin, right? He represents that more earthly wisdom, a connection to the physical world, the history of Middle-earth.
Grounded, practical.
Exactly. While Galadriel, she's Noldorin, and she's known for her more, what's the word?
Ethereal.
Ethereal, yes. And her insight, almost prophetic.
Seeing the future, the possibilities.
Right. So you have this amazing combination. Celeborn's grounded wisdom and Galadriel's almost mystical intuition.
A really powerful blend.
And symbolically, it also suggests the harmony between these two major elven cultures, the Sindar and the Noldor.
Which maybe explains why Lothlórien is so successful, right? This balance, this harmony.
It creates stability.
Yeah, it's like the foundation of their realm.
And it makes you appreciate those quiet moments, those scenes where they're, conferring, discussing.
Working together, making decisions.
Right, because it's not just about romance. It's about a shared purpose, a shared vision for Lothlórien.
No, I gotta say, the movies, they really dropped the ball on this whole dynamic.
Oh, for sure. They simplified it.
They made Celeborn into,
A generic elf lord.
Yeah, just kind of standing there looking regal.
Not much depth.
And I think that's why a lot of people who only know the movies, they kind of underestimate him.
He gets overlooked.
Big time. But even in the movies, there are these little hints, these glimpses of the real Celeborn, right?
Absolutely. You just have to know what to look for.
Okay, so what should we be paying attention to? What are the clues?
Take his greeting to the Fellowship when they arrive in Lothlórien. It's very formal, almost stiff.
Yeah, I remember that, especially towards Gimli.
Uh-huh. That's the key. There's a tension there, a historical weight.
Because of the whole elf-dwarf rivalry, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Centuries of mistrust, conflict.
So it's not just Celeborn being a grumpy elf.
It's a king, a leader, who's seen the damage that these ancient grudges can cause.
So even a simple greeting reveals all this backstory, all this history.
It's subtle, but it's there. And it hints at his deep understanding of the complexities of Middle-earth.
It's like we're seeing the tip of the iceberg with his character.
Exactly. And there's more, even with the boats, the elven boats he gives the Fellowship.
Oh, yeah, those beautiful boats.
Those are more than just transportation.
Right, it's a huge gesture of trust.
Especially after his initial hesitation, his concerns about the Fellowship's mission.
He's putting his faith in them, in Gandalf.
And it shows his pragmatism again, right? He's willing to set aside his doubts for the greater good.
It's not just blindly following Galadriel, it's him making a calculated decision.
A decision based on his own wisdom, his own assessment of the situation.
It's just a shame the movies didn't, explore that more.
Agreed. Although, to be fair to Tolkien, he struggled with Celeborn too.
Really? Even Tolkien had trouble with him.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
From his letters, it seems he envisioned Celeborn as this grounding force.
Opposite of Galadriel.
Exactly. He wanted to create this contrast, this balance between them. But he had difficulty fleshing it out.
So even Tolkien wrestled with how to write him.
He saw the potential, but it's almost like Celeborn remained a bit elusive.
It's funny to think about, even Tolkien having writer's block.
Well, he was human, after all.
True, true. But maybe there's something to that, you know? Maybe that tension, that difficulty, it adds to Celeborn's mystery.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
It leaves us with more questions than answers.
Which is kind of perfect for a deep dive, right? So is Celeborn's role really just to support Galadriel, or is there something more going on?
There's the question we need to explore. Celeborn's definitely not just a sidekick. Tolkien, he really explored this idea of collaborative leadership, you know?
Yeah.
And Celeborn, he's the perfect example.
So it's not about being the big hero.
Not always, no. Think about the different leaders we see in Middle-earth.
Okay, yeah.
You've got Aragorn, the classic warrior king, Gandalf, the wise guide, even Denethor, consumed by the burdens of power.
Right, right. All different types.
Exactly. But Celeborn, he represents something else. A strength rooted in, well, in wisdom, careful counsel, that kind of thing.
So not commanding armies, but offering guidance.
More like a strategist, you know?
Yeah.
Thinking several steps ahead.
It makes you wonder, how many Celeborns are out there in the real world? The people working behind the scenes, the advisors.
The ones who don't always get the credit.
They're crucial to success.
Exactly. And this connects to another fascinating part of Celeborn's story.
Okay, what's that?
While Galadriel eventually sails west, Celeborn actually stays in Middle-earth for a while.
Wait, really? He doesn't go with her?
Nope, not right away. He even rules Lothlórien on his own for a time.
Wow, I never really thought about that.
We're so used to seeing them as a pair, this united front.
The power couple.
Right. So what does it say about him that he's willing to, take on that responsibility solo?
Good question. Shows he's not just defined by his relationship with Galadriel.
Exactly. He has his own strength, his own connection to Middle-earth. Think about what it means for an elf to choose to stay, as everything around them is changing, fading.
Oh, right. It's like he's resisting the inevitable.
Holding on to the beauty of the elven world even as it slips away. It ties into one of Tolkien's big themes,
Which one?
The passing of an age. That bittersweet sense of loss as the elves gradually withdraw from Middle-earth.
And Celeborn's right there, in the midst of it.
Embodying that resistance, that determination to preserve what he can. And it's even more poignant when you remember his backstory.
You mean Doriath?
Exactly. Witnessing the fall of Doriath in the First Age, one of the grandest elven kingdoms that had to shape him.
Oh, yeah. That experience stays with you.
He understands the fragility of even the most powerful realms. It explains his cautious nature, wanting to protect Lothlórien, preserve what's left.
So it's not just about being careful. It's about understanding how precious, how fleeting beauty can be.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
But eventually, even Celeborn leaves Middle-earth, right?
He does. The sources mention he spends time in Lindon first, before making the final journey west.
Lindon? Way there.
Well, during those last years, Lindon, ruled by Círdan the Shipwright, it became like the last elven haven in Middle-earth.
Oh, like a final gathering place?
A place of transition, where elves would prepare to sail to Valinor.
So, not just a random stop. What do you think drew Celeborn to Lindon specifically?
I think it was a place to connect with other elves, going through the same experience.
Processing that grief, that loss.
Exactly. He'd lost Galadriel, his partner for centuries. He was leaving Lothlórien behind, a realm he'd helped protect for ages. Lindon offered a space to reflect, find solace.
Makes sense. Like maybe not a retirement community, but a place for preparation, coming to terms with things.
Right. A place to say goodbye, to process leaving behind a world you've known for millennia.
And for elves, that connection to Valinor, their ancestral homeland, it's like the final step in a long journey.
It is. But Tolkien, he doesn't tell us why Celeborn finally chooses to leave.
Yeah.
What do you think? Based on what we know, what were his motivations?
Well, maybe he just felt like his time was over, Lothlórien was fading, Galadriel was gone, the world was changing, becoming something unfamiliar.
Like he'd outlived an era?
Yeah, exactly. Done his part.
And for an elf who has lived for thousands of years, seen countless kingdoms rise and fall, that feeling must have been powerful.
It's bittersweet, but peaceful too, in a way.
Like finding closure.
But there's another possibility too, right? Maybe he felt that pull towards Valinor, a longing to reunite with loved ones who had already passed.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. Elves have this deep yearning for Valinor, for that perfect realm.
Even Celeborn, after all this time.
Especially after being in Lindon, surrounded by those preparing for the journey.
So maybe it was both, a sense of an ending and a new beginning.
A complex mix of factors. And it's such a powerful image. The last elf lord leaving Middle-earth, carrying the memories of a fading age.
It really is. But one thing we haven't talked about much is Celeborn's capacity for growth, for change.
Oh, that's crucial. We see it with his reconciliation with Gimli, for example.
Right, letting go of old grudges.
Shows he's not stuck in the past.
Are there other hints of this evolution within him?
One of your sources mentions that Tolkien considered all sorts of storylines for Celeborn, some involving internal conflicts, moral struggles.
Oh, interesting. So not always wise and steady Celeborn.
Right. Tolkien wanted to give him more depth, maybe even a more active role in the Second Age conflicts.
Hold on, so are you saying Celeborn might have had a wild side?
Not wild exactly, but more turmoil, tough choices to grapple with. Tolkien wanted those complexities, but struggled to bring them to life.
Even Tolkien had characters he couldn't quite crack.
Well, it happens to the best of us.
True enough, but it makes those years in Lindon even more interesting.
It does, doesn't it?
Maybe it wasn't just about saying goodbye to Middle-earth.
Maybe it was about looking inward, confronting choices, finding a way to reconcile his experiences with who he was.
So his departure becomes this culmination of a journey, growth, healing, acceptance.
It's another of Tolkien's themes coming through, right?
So fun.
Resilience. Even facing loss, a fading era, there's still that capacity for change, for finding new meaning.
So Celeborn leaves Middle-earth, but he leaves behind this message of adaptability, of finding peace amidst change.
Passing on the torch, you could say. Sharing wisdom with the next generation.
We've covered so much, his lineage, his personality, Galadriel, his departure.
And it all ties back to Tolkien's big themes. The fading of beauty, the power of quiet strength, the spirit of the elves.
It's amazing how much depth there is to him, even though he's often overshadowed. But there's this one question that keeps popping up for me. We've talked about Celeborn seeing Doriath fall, Lothlórien fading, and him leaving Middle-earth. But what about after? The Fourth Age, the Age of Men. What would someone like Celeborn, with all he's seen, think about that shift?
It's interesting, right? Because Tolkien doesn't give us a clear answer.
Nope.
But knowing Celeborn, I think he'd be pretty pragmatic about it. Accepting, even...
So not bitter that the elves are fading.
I doubt it. He's a realist. He gets how history works, these cycles of, rise and fall. And he cares about all of Middle-earth, not just the elves.
He's shown that, yeah.
So the rise of men, he'd probably seen as natural, maybe even necessary.
And he can adapt. He's done it before, like with Gimli.
Exactly. So maybe he'd see the Fourth Age as a chance for elves and men to, work together.
Instead of being rivals.
Right, more collaboration. Passing on the torch, so to speak.
Sharing that elven wisdom.
Which fits Celeborn, right? He's always been more advisor than warrior.
The wise counselor.
So imagine him guiding these new leaders, the men, helping them avoid, the mistakes of the past.
Instead of just being sad about the elves leaving, he's helping shape what comes next.
That's a hopeful way to look at it.
It is.
Yeah.
It shows the elves still matter even as they fade.
their influence continues. Celeborn might be one of the last to leave, but his impact, his wisdom, could echo for generations.
Wow, we started thinking of him as Galadriel's husband, but look at all this.
He's so much more complex than that, right?
Yeah, thanks to your insights and these amazing excerpts you brought.
Tolkien created something special with him.
He really did. Celeborn represents that quiet strength, that elven spirit. Even when things are tough, he adapts, he finds a way to contribute, to be at peace.
And that's a message we can all learn from no matter what age we're in, right?
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we have one last thought for you. We've explored how Celeborn might have reacted to men taking over, but what do you think his legacy looks like in the Fourth Age and beyond? What can we learn from him today as things change all around us? Keep those questions in mind as you keep exploring Tolkien's world.